So last week I painted this gouache study and developed it into this painting. In this video I'm going to show you the process of how I got from that one to this one. So I started by transferring a new sketch to a 9x12 wooden panel, and you'll see that I have developed this gouache painting quite a bit, and it will look totally different than the original gouache study. I wanted to change it because I wasn't quite happy with the environment. I love the subject of the white tiger and the crow, and I wanted to just add to that and build upon it. And I'm kind of right now getting into the idea that I don't want to be too attached to my studies. If I get too attached, I lose out on a lot of creativity, I think. So I'm trying now to create these studies and then not get too married to them, if you know what I mean. I want to develop them into something completely new, and it's okay if everything changes, or I keep certain things that I like and I discard some that I don't. So that is what I have done with this painting, and you'll see I am using actually oil paint. This is different to the study. I remember feeling a bit worried before I began painting this piece, knowing that I was going to choose oil paint. Part of me was like, I shouldn't choose oil paint because it's too hard. But I was just making excuses for myself, and I realised that I can actually try. I can at least try, and it actually worked in my favour, as it allowed me to build texture, which is something that doesn't really happen when you're working with a flat medium of paint such as gouache. I love that this painting is already starting to come together, and this is the first session so far. So I'm about a few hours in and it's already starting to form itself. If I'm liking it and I'm enjoying it, that's a really good sign, and I have to follow that. So paying attention to my references that I built up in my sketching stage, I make sure to constantly look at them to make sure I'm painting accurately. I'm also remembering not to be too religious with my references, knowing that I can change them at any time. I don't have to get the perfect colour. I can develop that on the panel as I'm painting. And this is the beauty of using references in a really creative way. You're also not being married to them, just like the study that I just did. I'm not looking at that as if it is the only thing I can follow. I can go off trail. I can discover something new by just using it as a prompt and enjoying what I'm creating, and getting into the flow is the main thing I want to focus on. A big part of using oil paint is you make sure to paint in layers. You've got to use that to your advantage. The next time you look at a bush outside or a tree, you'll see that the detail is crazy when you think about it. There's so much detail in any type of plant. So simplifying and building up those shapes is what I was focusing on, and I was kind of applying that to every part of this painting. When you're working with a real subject in the real world, you're constantly looking at how much detail there is, and it's almost too much to process. So simplifying that in my painting is the best thing to do. I build up those layers by working in usually the shadows first, and then I build up my values and tonal structure of the subject, and I go from there. So it really is a simple process. It just takes a bit of time and effort, which is definitely welcome when you're trying to paint something that you're really proud of. To me, that is the success in the painting. I find success by creating things that's challenging but also rewarding at the same time. Also, part of the success comes from the unknown and stepping into the unknown, being a little bit courageous and facing that. Sometimes it's really overpowering to have the idea of even stepping into the unknown, and it takes a while for our bodies to kind of catch up. But if you power through and you trust yourself by taking that leap, I think you can go really far, and you can take your work into places where you are surprised and you are really proud of. The act of trying is something that is very underrated in the art world. A lot of people don't really talk about that, and you kind of just see the final painting as the final painting. You don't see the whole story and the journey behind that painting. So I think it's important for artists to discuss ways in which they got to that final painting. You see that I'm constantly surprising myself with my paintings, because I started like this painting with a study where it looked nothing like this, and a week later I've got something that's completely different and developed from that original idea. And that is something that we've got to make sure we're welcoming, because if we get too carried away with what other people think and what other people want or anything like that, we're going to lose out on things like this where magic can really happen. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about this painting. I think it's cool and I feel fulfilled about that. So I'm just trying to get into that mindset a bit more, to ensure that my art can really show exactly what I'm capable of. At this point in the painting process, I have laid down all the foundation, and I'm simply adding certain highlights and different colour tonal values to the painting to build up a little bit more detail. And especially with the fox, I'm trying to pay attention with how the fur is falling, and making it so that some parts are hitting the light and some parts are in shadow is the key to painting something like fur. It's quite a complex structure, but really it's just a mix between tonal values and just making sure you kind of get the gist of that at first, and then add to it once the paint is dry. And because I'm working with oil paint, I'm allowed to build up those layers over time, and it kind of lends itself to it. I'm now working in a little bit more of the foliage, and just adding those tiny little details that you probably won't catch on a first time viewing of this painting. The more you look at it, the more you discover, and that's something that I love myself when I view paintings. One thing I discovered when painting this is that I can really up the saturation to some select colours in the shadows, and I'm doing this on the curb where the red is pretty much red straight out the tube. I'm using a colour called Scarlet Lake from Michael Hardin, and it is such a powerful colour if you barely mix anything with it. And I'm doing that to some parts now in the shadows where I'm not mixing too much into the paint, as I want to keep it as saturated as possible, and that really pops. I love the effect that it brings to the painting, and that's something that I definitely would have not done in the past. I wouldn't think that is a viable option, but it definitely proves to add vibrancy in a painting. So that is the finished painting, kind of, maybe. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to give this a break for now. I'm going to maybe come back to it next week to see if there's any more highlights I need to add. To give myself a break from a painting, it's okay. It's only going to bring a little bit more clarity to the painting, and see if I want to add anything to it. But for now, I'm really proud of myself for creating something that looked nothing like the study. I've really developed this, and I'm very proud of myself for doing that. So yeah, I hope you guys can learn something, that you don't have to be too married to your sketches. You can change them at any time. It's okay, guys. I've proved it here, and I hope that you can create a successful painting by being happy with your process and allowing yourself to go into the unknown where all the ideas can flourish.